Early Greek philosophers believed there was one universal substance, a building block, if you will, that the world is made of. It's water, says Thales. No, it's not an element. It's the boundless and infinite apeiron, says Anaximander. What does Anaximenes say? Well, he takes a seemingly uncharacteristic step back and claims it to be one of the four elements, air. Is this dumb, or is it actually quite clever? You'll find out by the end of this video. So Whoa, wait a moment. Thales thought the Earth was flat, resting on water. Anaximander thought the Earth was a cylinder. What does Anaximenes say? These ancient philosophers had interesting things to say, but if you want to focus on the silly stuff, then fine. According to Aetius, Anaximenes says the Earth is table-shaped, riding upon the air due to its flatness, and that the sun was also flat, but flat like a leaf. The stars originating out of the Earth because the moisture from the Earth rose up to form the stars. And the stars hang like nails in the crystalline substance. Okay, that's about enough internet today for me. I'm checking out. Some might argue that to choose one of the four elements is a step back. To many, the idea that water is a universal substance for which everything comes from or is made of defies common sense. Anaximander's incomplete answer that it must be some unknown, boundless substance seems like a step up and away from the four elements. Emphasizing the four elements is like something out of Shaolin Showdown. Surely too silly to be considered philosophical progress. Well, no. Here is how Anaximenes is actually a step forward and not back. Anaximenes differs from his teacher, Anaximander, taking a more scientific, simple, and economical writing style. Anaximander wrote about the apeiron as always in conflict with injustice. Anaximenes would explain observed phenomena through argument and reasoning in the natural world, rather than attributing anything to gods. For example, his observations of rainbows as the rays of the sun on compacted air, and not simply describing it as some goddess. It's not just his writing and reasoning. Anaximander's apeiron was hard to explain. In fact, it was hard to observe in nature. Anaximander was indeterminate. It was hard to pin down what the boundless apeiron was. For Anaximenes, air is determinate. It is observable, as is its process of change and genesis.
Anaximenes declared that the principle is unlimited air, the arche from which all things come to be things, everything that has come to be, even gods and the divine. The form of air when it is most even is invisible, but it is revealed by the cold and the hot and the wet and by its motion. It is always moving, for all things that undergo change would not change if it were not moving. It can become cloud, earth, and stone.
How is air the universal substance? The invisible state of air is its most natural state. So air comes prior to water. Air, water, ice. Since air is both an observable substance and more compelling substance than water, it is the universal arche. Anaximenes seems to have partially understood expansion. He knew that as water heated up, it expanded into air, and it contracts as it is cool, but didn't quite see that water actually stops contracting around 4 degrees Celsius and begins to expand again. He failed to observe this exception, but to be fair to him, this was a good effort. Anaximenes seems to have a more consistent theory of a universal substance. If, for example, the universal substance is water, how much of fire is water? Anaximenes explains what Thales could not. The diversity in form, air, water, ice, relates to there being more or less of the universal substance in one place through expansion or retraction. Despite this, he is still a monist. All things proceed from one and are resolved into the same.
The boundless, when it had acquired bounds and become differentiated into variously qualified components of a cosmos, was no longer the boundless, but air could be denser or rarer, hotter or colder, and still remain the same substance.
So, is it much more plausible to suppose that everything started from one stuff than to suppose that everything is ultimately composed of some one stuff? For Anaximenes, probably yes. As we know, air is not the universal substance, but he seems to have been trying his gosh darn best to provide reasons to justify phenomena based on observations, which is something that comes to define philosophical thought. On the flip side, Anaximenes made no attempt to explain what degree of compression turned air into cloud or water, and according to Barnes, Anaximenes' theories are particularly resistant to testing, so not quite empiricism. For Anaximenes and his teacher, the universal substance has existed in motion forever. The arche is, and has been, everlasting. This was not a view unique to the monists, but was common in 6th century BCE Greece, and does not seem to have been questioned by the monists. For Aristotle, this lack of an explanation for everlasting motion was unacceptable. There is no explanation to these natural philosophers as to what set the universal substance into motion. Even though the Milesians believed in the gods, they said the arche is uncaused, or self-caused. And Anaximenes is also said to believe that the world is alive and breathing. It's hard to really make sense of this, and it is worth noting we have very little evidence to go on. The Milesian philosophers did not write books. We only know of them through the scraps of writings of others like Aristotle and Diogenes Laertius. If you remember, Thales saw water all around him. Water was necessary to live. For Anaximenes, we perpetually breathe in air, which gives us life and motion. The soul enters into us from the whole as we breathe, borne by the winds. Some of these ideas were commonplace in Greek culture, but Anaximenes tried to explain this belief through observation, in a clearer way than Anaximander, and with greater reasoning than Thales. If you liked this video, then I think you will love hearing about Anaximenes' alleged student, the man who started a triangle cult, Pythagoras.